the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with Bryan Carrier. Bryan, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
First of all, thanks for having me. Who am I? Actually, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and moved down here like in the early 90s. And it's really hot here now in Florida. And everybody's complaining because it's hotter than it's always been. But, as far as writing goes, I've always written something. And I worked in the printing field and retired from there. So when I was operating different printing presses, I put a piece of paper on the table and I would just write a story while I'm running the presses. And so I just kept doing that.
How interesting. So you got to watch things being printed while you're writing. And of course, now printing is an entirely different animal.
It is. And the presses that I ran, I was at my company for 20 plus years as a production coordinator and operating different presses and stuff. When I left, there was nobody coming up behind me. So they just actually threw away the presses.
Well, that's one way to end a career.
Well, it kind of made me feel good because there was nobody around that could actually run them because every press has their own characteristic. Unfortunately, the copiers took over, and that's where we're at today.
So what does it actually take to get published?
A lot of willpower. So you have to stick with it. And that's really important because it doesn't matter where you go, what you do, what goal you have. Somebody's always going to piss on your parade. So, you have to be your own cheerleader. And whatever they say, I used to take it really hard, but now I take it with a grain of salt and I just walk away and do my own thing. And you have to be willing to do that.
Oh, that is really true. I know that you were a children's author. You wrote books called Glasses for Wally, Billy Bop's Robot, Bebop, There's Something Fishy About My Fish, and the list goes on. And now you switched to writing a novel that sounds a bit more like a Rockies movie franchise. Tell me how that happened.
It's kind of funny because I told Heather, my wife, that I would never write a novel, ever. Because people spend 3 to 4 months on a novel, and then you have to edit it, and then you have to rewrite it, and then you have to read it. And it's just an endless thing. It's like a marathon. So I decided I'm never going to do that. So my publication was sold. And so in between the merger, authors were asked not to submit anything until they can get everything running smooth. So I had a great idea of writing a novella. That should be about 25,000 words. I can do that. And so I started out and it was Rise Up. And when I hit the 25,000 word mark, I wasn't even close to being done. And I was mad because the characters wanted to keep going, but I wanted to finish it. So 94,000 words later, it was actually done. But I'm happy with it. I actually started on another one. So I guess I'm in the writing novels.
Let's talk about this novel, though. It's called Rise Up Against Domestic Violence. And I had the opportunity to read the synopsis where you have a female protagonist who is a champion boxer and then takes on the challenge of fighting the world champion male boxer, but flashbacks I'm assuming you employed flashbacks with her domestic abuse childhood. So how did you handle that? That's a really sensitive, complex subject.
Well, actually, I didn't even want to do it. The very first sentence, and I don't want to give anything away, but the very first sentence I questioned, I even stopped and asked Rosalie, what are you doing? And so my gut feeling said, keep going, you'll find out. And I did. And I was absolutely shocked. I didn't plan anything. I never plan anything when I write. I don't do any synopsis. I don't put any fences around the story. I allow the characters to drive the bus, and they surprise me every time. It's like, do you really want to do that? And when I take them that way, then something really unique happens. So I let it go. As far as the domestic violence, it just happened. I mean, I didn't know that I was going to write that. That's not what the book was about. What the book is really about, actually, today we have men challenging women in swimming and tennis and all this stuff. Well, why don't women go into men's sports? And so I questioned that, and I asked, I can't even tell you how many women, do you think a woman could actually challenge a man in sports? And pretty much all of them said yes. Okay, so why aren't they doing it? I think that would turn everything upside down. So I just decided, I'm going to have a woman take on the champion in boxing, because I've seen some pretty mean women. And actually, in my head, I was thinking Ronda Rousey as the main character. That's who I thought would be great for that role. And so she was always in my mind. And when I was writing it, it just so happened that when Rosalie was finished for the fight, she came out of the shower and there is the champ on the TV. And he was caught hitting his wife in an elevator. And so Rosie said, hey, why don't you fight somebody who can defend themselves? And that's when the media took it. The champ heard about it, and then they kind of pushed them together. And it just kind of, Rosie didn't want to do it.
And then having to, did you have to do research for this? I mean, this is.
No, I did nothing. I just allowed the story just to develop itself, because I can always fix it later, but all the bones were there. It was a great story. And I can't write a story unless I have a title. So Rise Up I thought it was really a good title for what's happening.
So switching from children's books to novels, what's the biggest difference?
Well, children's books, picture books are usually 500 words or less. And you really have to be concise with your writing. There's a formula there for the children's books. You have to take out needless words. And I learned to take out needless words, take sentences, turn them around to mean the same thing, allow enough space there for the illustrator to do their job. And I learned that 500 words for me is kind of easy, because I break up the story in like 130 words for the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I could fix all that. But then it's done. I like to get in and out of a story. And that's a children's story. But a novel, you're on it forever. Honestly, I never thought I would do that. And I actually have another book that's in editing called The Space Between. And that book is really cool, because coal miners go to work in the morning in 1943. When they come out, it's 2021.
That is interesting. Well, I guess time travel, is that considered time travel?
The whole thing is in the story. But what I found interesting is when one guy left for work, his wife was pregnant. When he came back, his kid was 78 years old. She's in her 90s. And another guy, his house isn't even there anymore. And everything has just changed. And I was going to leave it like that, but I couldn't. I had to get him back to 1943.
So in the different types, so you've experimented with novella, novels, and children's books. What's your editing process with those?
If I write something today and I'm going to sit down and write tomorrow, then I'll go through what I wrote yesterday and I'll edit all of that. And then I'll start my writing process for today. That way I'm constantly editing what I write. And so when the story is finished and I go through it, I really don't have a lot of editing to do.
Well, that's lucky.
I read Rise Up, I don't know how many times. I'm so tired of it. you have to rewrite, you have to fix this, fix that. And of course, that was a delicate situation, but I didn't want to hide anything. I just brought it out because it came to the forefront. Let's just leave it there. Something has to be done. So I put it out there.
Very, very interesting. All right, let's talk about your children's books. You've got some pretty funky names for these books. Does that help sell?
Let's talk about Billy Bob's Robot Bebop.
All right.
I was at work, and my job that day was to fold boxes. So I was extremely bored, and I was on the point of falling asleep. So of course I had my paper there, and I started writing this story, and I don't know where it came from. Billy Bob walking down the road on Bebop Lane, and it just went on and on and on. It was so bad. I tried to read it to a coworker, and it was horrible. I mean, absolutely horrible. But the bones were there. So when I was working, I would write on Saturday morning, like from 6 to 12. And if I wrote something during the week, I would put it on my computer. And then on Saturday morning, I would come back and I would rewrite it. So I took Billy Bop and I rewrote it to what it is today. But that was written at work. And so was There's Something Fishy About My Fish. I wrote that on the table at work. And it was just so outrageous. I just kept it going because I don't know where it came from. But, when you start something, you kind of have to see where it goes. And that's how the fish story came about. I mean, really, a fish living outside of its bowl. Who does that?
Right. Yes. Well, it's children's books. We can use our imagination.
It is. But the best one, the one that the kids absolutely love, is I Fired My Dog. Because
I want to fire my dog sometimes too.
And in the book, it even says you can't fire your dog. So the guy is like, he's so mad, he fires his dog. We've got Ruby and Bean here, and I fire them every day.
Yes. Yeah. I can appreciate that one. I have she's a crazy dog, but she's
I'm
loving.
sorry. The book actually teaches the kids to train their dogs, that they can train their dogs. So this dog, of course, a new puppy is going to chew up everything in sight, right? So the guy gets mad, and then one of his workers say, hey, why don't you take the dog to training? And of course, dog trainers don't train the dogs, they train the humans. And so that's what the book is really about. Every book, it has some meaning to it.
Yep. The lessons that children learn are from all around.
Without them knowing it. That's the key. And now I take the books and I go to schools and libraries and I read them to the kids. And my wife and her friend are dog trainers. So I'll read the books and then afterwards they do tricks for the kids with the dogs, and they love it.
That's fun. Yeah, my crazy dog is pretty well, she knows her commands. But for lie down, she doesn't lie down all the way unless you say all the way. And I've learned I don't have to say lie down. I can just say all the way. And she goes all the way. Like she skipped the whole lie down part. She just went, it's like, she was so excited about treats that she's like, I can't.
If your dog is food motivated, you can teach it anything.
Yes. And when she was a puppy, she wasn't, and she's got a really sensitive stomach. So we have to feed her special food and special snacks and all that good stuff. But the older she's gotten, the more she's able to have some treats. And so she's becoming, as a 4-year-old, she's now very food motivated.
That's good. Because now you can really train it.
Right. Just the barking thing has got to stop.
Okay. I don't know how to do any of that. Heather trains the dogs. They don't listen to me at all. So yeah. I'm the play guy.
Yeah, she's a guardian dog. So she sits on the steps and watches for the kids coming off the school bus. And then she lets us know that they are there on her property. She's not very happy about that.
Man, that's great.
Bryan Carrier, how can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more about your books?
I have a bryancarrierauthor.com, and everything is on there. they can go to Amazon, Kindle, Barnes and Noble, and it's all out there.
All right, Bryan, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Okay, why not?
This is a really simple one. I'm just lobbing this one to you. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
What is your dream car?
Oh man, I had a 56 Buick at one time. Absolutely loved it. The chrome and everything. I would go with a car from the 50s. I don't care what it is.
And what is your favorite meal?
Barbecue chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy, and corn.
Sounds like a dinner to me.
But we can throw pizza in there too if you want.
Pizza's always a winner. Pizza's always a winner.
What's yours?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say macaroni and cheese.
Ooh, that's really good.
Can't eat it anymore, but I love it.
It's funny how you get older, how you can't eat certain things. And then when you try, you get sick.
We all have our things that we can do, but we can dream about it.
Well, and we can also live through other people.
Absolutely.
Right.
Bryan Carrier, it's been a delight to have you on the Florida Writer Podcast.
It was nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
You have been listening to the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. Woo! We're all done.
That's kind of when I ran the presses, I would listen to these on the radio. I would actually turn everything off and listen to authors talk about their books or whatever. So actually being here is kind of weird.
Bryan Carrier is a Cleveland, Ohio native and the author of several children's books, including Glasses for Wally, Billy Bop's Robot, Bebop, There's Something Fishy About My Fish, and I Fired My Dog. Bryan's latest release is Rise Up Against Domestic Violence, Books 1 and 2. These are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kindle. For more information about Bryan, visit his author page at bryancarrierauthor.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org. Until next time.